The Police Athletic League for Troubled Youth, also known as PACE, received some additional funding from the Omaha City Council today.
The organization is trying to remove itself from a scandal from almost 2 years ago. First Alert 6 reporter Philip Katafamo spoke with organizers about rebuilding the community's trust.
4 men were indicted in April 2023 in connection with misusing funds with the Latino Police Officers Association and PACE. 3 of them, a former city council member and 2 former OPD officers, are out of federal prison. The chief fundraiser is awaiting sentencing. The scandal raised a lot of questions about the program and hurt trust within the community. Trust Lindsay Toussaint Brown is working to get back.
It is super important to see this restructure itself and reinvigorate the community along with it. But Brinker is completely right. It is a trust factor, and we need to rebuild that, and I think we're doing a great job. There's still more work to be done, though.
She says continued transparency is how they keep that trust. The Omaha Sports Commission took over PACE after the scandal. PACE was awarded $50,000 earlier this year by the mayor, with the condition that another $50,000 would be available if PACE continued to have better fiscal controls and oversight in place. Tuesday, the City Council approved a second round of funds to help with adding personnel, equipment, field space, and new sports like basketball to reach more kids.
Roll call.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Harding.
Yes.
Hug.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0. Thank you.
South Omaha Councilman Ron Hug replaced the council member indicted in the scandal. He says as soon as the mayor distributed the initial round of funding, he was on board.
That showed the rest of the community that the city once again had confidence in PACE. And that opened up the door for other donors to step back in. So that was very significant.
Hug says it's about providing opportunity for these kids.
Kids these days need all the opportunities they can get. There's so many distractions for them, negative distractions, and for them to have a positive opportunity to better themselves, be around a better atmosphere, and that's what PACE brings to them.
Though not everyone is in support of the funding. One resident spoke at the council meeting, raising questions about OPD's involvement in the program. But to be clear, he is not against the program existing.
Happy to see that the kids have something to do. It serves underserved communities. These kinds of programs should exist just without the police involvement.
In Omaha, I'm Philip Katafamo, First Alert 6.
Our plans for future funding of the program pending approval from the City Council next year.